Amazing. Welcome to our first webinar from nontechnicalfounders.com. We're just getting started making the life of non-technical founders better, hopefully, right? And the way we believe we can do it is by getting together, learning from each other, sharing our struggles, and by making visible some things that are usually invisible, or at least not shown with enough light, right? That is the reality of non-technical founders in a world that values a lot technical people, right? That's the goal of this community. I would like to start, before we get into the theme of the webinar, I would like to start by asking everyone who feels comfortable to share their name, their startup, what they're doing, right? And at what stage you're at. Like, you're on idea phase, you're creating your product, you're raising funds to the next round, whatever you think that's your current stage. Can you guys do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So this is Tyler. I'm based in the U.S. in San Francisco. My startup is called Retire, and the goal with Retire is to simply really help people understand and make sense of retirement savings. I think the problem that we found is nobody really thinks about retirement because it's so far into the future, and if you don't have a finance background, and even if you do, the way that a lot of the companies are set up, it's just really difficult to actually know where your money is and where your money is invested. So that was what we're trying to solve and address. And I say we, it's myself and another non-technical co-founder who have kind of come from a similar financial services background. And where we're at today, so we are working with Daniel and the team to build out the MVP, the first version, which will be ready in the beginning of November. And for us, finding an agency and a group of folks to work on this and build out the MVP, I think was the perfect solution to build something that was super high quality, but also get to market very quickly and not have to spend 6 to 12 months, frankly, trying to find that one unicorn CTO candidate. And then the last thing I'll just mention is for us, I think building out the MVP is going to put us in a really good position to go to fundraise and kind of raise that first round of capital to kind of prove to people that, hey, we can build something even though we don't have a CTO, and have and start getting results and feedback much more quickly.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Tyler.
I can go next. I'm Catherine. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, and I've been working on my startup for over a year. It's called Amlia, and it's to help people organize and take their dietary supplements more safely and effectively. And where I am is I already do a lot of networking. I belong to some women's startup groups because I try to keep my startup networking more local when I can. So that's why I'm here, to do something different. But where I am is I had joined forces, or hired, I should say, a technical group to build my product. I found out about them through another Seattle non-technical startup pair that had their app built by them. Those two people had over 20 years of Microsoft experience behind them. So they had experience building apps. So I really trusted their recommendation, but it didn't go well. And I'm starting over. So I've spent the last 6 months meeting people and networking and trying to recruit a technical co-founder. And after 6 months of that, last month, I had success with actually the first person I started talking to way back in April. So we have been rebuilding for the last 10 days or so, and already things look a lot better, but it's all in test mode and not available for anybody to see. But so I'm in a rebuilding mode. I've gotten a lot done. I just got my trademark certificate this week, and that's all exciting, but it means nothing until I can launch a product and have customers and revenue. So I'm just always looking for new ideas for how to get to that measurable, tangible thing, which is what will help me take this bigger.
Incredible, incredible. I'm gonna ask you, and you shared in the community a bit more about your experiences. I'm gonna ask you more detail later. I'm curious to know more. Who's next? Yes, Andre, we're all seeing you and reading you. I'm gonna read out loud just so we have Andres is telling he's in a noisy place right now, so he's gonna write a bit. Are you typing your story, Andre? Yes, yes. So Naresh, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, and then I'm gonna read what Andre types for us.
That's
Can you
fine.
do that?
Yeah. So basically, we are a startup, as in we're already in revenue, and basically we are in education space. Mostly want to, it's global, wherever anybody wants to search, and it's like a Trivago or a Airbnb, where across the globe you can search for a course or a university, apply, and then just go for it. It's a level playing field, or it's to democratize the education space itself. Right now it's very tightly controlled by agents, or it's very tough, difficult to understand what course you need and where in the world that course is cheapest or highest rated, and all of those things. You'll have to do a lot of Googling and things. So that's our startup, and basically we are trying to raise funds for seed round at this minute. And also we are very good with business processes and managing our company, but at the other end, technology wise, we're just coping up with external users or consultants.
Amazing. We have a nice group here, various phases. I think we're gonna be able to share a lot. So, okay, while Andrea is typing, I'm gonna talk a bit. We do have a theme for this webinar, which is like an excuse for us to chat. Let's not take the theme too seriously, but the theme is what an article, a chapter of my book I called the non-technical founders formula. Basically, when I call the attention to this formula, I'm trying to shed a light in one thing that I think it's the main issue of non-technical founders. Non-technical founders start out with a slower iteration time than technical founders. They can get to market. They take much more time to get to market than if we were programmers, right? And until we find a solution that's agile enough, we're gonna have a worse time after launch than we had before launching, because after we launch, we need to learn and adapt fast, right? And as non-technical founders, we start differently. Let's just think about that. We are handicapped in that area. The other variable of the formula is the need for proof. Once you start, when you start out as a non-technical founder, you need to prove yourself at every interaction. And that's something, of course, every founder is trying to do something different and need to prove herself at every stage, but a non-technical founder needs to prove that they can execute their business as well. Not only that their business is good, not only that they have traction, not only their track record, they need to prove they have the ways for executing their business. And the formula says iteration time plus need for proof equals cash burned. That means the more time you take to adapt to what you learn, make it to your product what you learn, plus the more you need to prove yourself, equals how much cash you're gonna have to burn before breaking even. So a result of this way of thinking is non-technical founders usually need to raise more money than technical ones, or invest from their own pockets or friends and family. This kind of thinking applies much more for non-technical founders. And what I'm trying to do here is to create an idea that it doesn't have to be that way. We can remain non-technical founders and reduce our iteration time. We can remain non-technical and reduce our need for proof, how much we need to prove ourselves. We're gonna dive into the detail later about how, and but we can. We've seen it happen a lot. I've been working with non-technical founders for 21 years now. My first client ever was a non-technical founder, and that happens to start a long journey. So I've seen it happen. I know it can happen. I know you guys know it because you're doing it. So I wanted us together today to share very specific struggles we're facing. Might be to reduce our iteration time, might be to reduce our need for proof, or anything else, so we can make it happen together, make our lives better, right? Yes, that's as much preamble I needed. So now we can start talking. Does anyone have any thought they want to share about this, or anything else that comes to mind when I talk about this formula?
Well, Daniel, we talked about this briefly the other day, but I think it's important that non-technical founders recognize that they have strengths too that technical people don't have. And I encounter people all the time when I go to technical gatherings who are faced with that, and they're frustrated by how, their experience limits them. So I think it's important not to feel too badly about not having that experience, because each side has tremendous value, and that can be recognized.
That is amazing. Yeah, as I'm sharing in the book a bit about by the way, to the people that's watching in the future, I'm writing a book that's called Way of the Non-Technical Founder, and I share a bit about my decision to become a technical founder because I couldn't convince people to join me. And then later on, my decision of getting out of the technical life wasn't for me. It took me 9 years to understand that, but it wasn't for me. So after doing that, I understand I have a ton of value to bring to the table that it has nothing to do with technical ability. And that's what Catherine does. One thing that Catherine does is that she interacts with a lot of people and make friends with a lot of people. Am I right, Catherine?
Mm-hmm.
And by becoming friends with a lot of people...
You're muted.
Again, I try to make it a policy to go at least twice a week to some or another meeting, and sometimes they're at 7 in the morning. Sometimes I have one next week that goes till late at night, and I won't get home till really late. But I think it's useful. My motto is if I meet one person at an event, that's all I need.
That's amazing. And then these people start trusting you, right? Once you develop a relationship. Am I right?
Well, I'd say I don't know if they start trusting me, but I start learning from other people and they learn from me, and then I build my network. And then when I have a question, for instance, I realized a while back that I needed for pitches, I needed a better pitch, and I needed kind of a 1-pager, 2-pager, and like a 4-pager. And I felt that I didn't like my pitch, and I met somebody whose her whole career is built on helping people do their marketing pitches, and we met over lunch, and through my network, I was able to refine that instead of having to hire a consultant to help with that, or instead of continuing to flail around. And now I'm pretty happy with it.
That's amazing. Okay, we have Andre's story. I'm gonna read it so everybody knows it. Andres has a startup that's called Place with a Y in the middle. It's based in Porto Alegre, Brazil. They make gathering between friends easier by organizing events with polls. The pain they're solving for is the infinite WhatsApp chats that people can't collaborate to organize events because WhatsApp groups are not made for that. I'm improvising instead of reading because I feel better like that. And they're 2 weeks from launch. That's great to hear, man. So, and they have a part-time developer now. That's a great moment to be. Both Andre and Tyler are 2 weeks from launch. Please,
very exciting.
Yeah, please share it on the community once you launch, right?
Yeah, absolutely, we'll do.
Naresh, what would you say is your biggest struggle right now? You say you're looking to raise a seed round. Is your main challenge a seed round right now?
Well, I personally would say yes. That's my main challenge. So obviously, as I said, when I am in the US, it's a lot better because people go by what the problem you're solving. When I am in the UK, it's a lot different because people go by numbers. So when you say you have, if in here you have to always say I have 1 million customers on my platform, or 1 million users which I'm catering to, or something of that sort, or my app is being downloaded by 10,000 or 500,000 people. These are kind of things which, or you've generated so much revenue. So it's different in different places. Plus, I think it's also different in different places. When we were in SF Bay Area, they always they said you're other than one person in your technical team, there is actually not enough technical resource. Yours being a technology product. So some of the founders, but each VC has a different way of looking. But yeah, seed round is my #1 priority now because I have a very small time to market.
Can I ask you more questions about it? Like get deeper? How many meetings are you having with VCs? I don't know, per week?
Yeah, difficult one. So when you are around, as Catherine does, you are in one or the other events and you're talking to VCs constantly, and then you get to pitch for them. When you are off it, it is like 2 a month or something. Yeah, so it's a hard question, but VCs prefer what we have realized, unless somebody else tells me something else, or if you guys are successful and can introduce us to some VC, introduction is the only thing that works, frankly. So networking, and then somebody who's successful, not it's not the VC who will introduce to another VC. It's the successful platform of that VC who will need to introduce you. So it's a catch-22, frankly speaking, and it's a hard one.
I was told by a VC here, I've been to a number of VC panels, and these are small panels, so I think they're more inclined to say what they really think. But I've been told that unless they have at least 3 LinkedIn contacts with you, they aren't even going to look at anything you send them, that they have to know that you're within their sphere. And I can believe that.
Yeah, so and even LinkedIn has very little, 0.01% hit rate. But if you are in, say, if Daniel is a successful, has got a successful exit, and Daniel's VC gets introduced, I get introduced via Daniel. That is 100%. You at least get to stand in front of them. Rest assured, you will. But then, unless you are introduced by a successful one of VC's successful exits, it's extremely hard to reach that stage or get the trust level. Now that's what our experience in the last 8 months where we are trying this.
And I feel like when you come in without a technical co-founder, it's so easy for them to just automatically go to the no, just because it's such a priority in terms of how they think about it, that you're immediately starting from just a weak position, right? So how do you kind of mitigate that and kind of prove to them? I think that's why showing that you've built something without that technical co-founder kind of goes a long way. But even then, you need to get that person to engage with whatever you have built, which is also not an easy task.
Yeah, the nice thing about this section of our conversation is that we are talking about what I call the need for proof, right? We have the burden of proof against us, right? So how do we manage to deal with it? I see from what Tyler brought to the table is one thing we can do to make it happen is to provide proof. Okay, here's the evidence that I can execute product. Here is the evidence that I do have traction, for example. Or if you have a track record, then it's way better still. For example, if you've successfully exited a startup, just like Naresh says. Well, I have to share something. I successfully exited a startup here in Brazil. It is on Crunchbase. You can see the proof. But just by saying that I successfully exited a startup, people don't check the proof. They tend to believe me more. That brings us to the second part of the solution, which is, okay, we can provide evidence, but we won't be able to provide as much evidence as technical people usually can, unless we are very smart business people, which we are. So we're gonna work for that. But we can also work to reduce the need for proof, which is create trust with people. Once you're on the network, they trust you more, just like Naresh was saying, and just like Catherine was saying. But once you're coming to them asking for advice, like Catherine is doing a lot from what I hear, they will see that you learned from their advice. They will see that you improved from their advice. They start gaining confidence in you as a founder, and they can then introduce you to other angel investors. For example, you're asking for advice from a VC that invests in a seed round, and you're showing them that you're learning, you're becoming friends with them. More than that, then you call them for advice. They might make an introduction instead of giving you advice, right? Because you're developing a relation. So I see two ways of dealing with the need for proof: providing evidence and reducing the need for providing evidence. As of now, the way I know for reducing the need is creating relationships. I don't know if you guys have any other way you can think about it. Instead of, I don't know, creating a faking resume, but that's short-lived.
I have a suggestion for Naresh that you may already be doing, but one of the things that I do is I attend pitch competitions, and I've only pitched once yet. So because my product isn't ready, I don't feel very good about doing that, although there are plenty of people who do. There's an organization that I belong to here in Seattle that's in London. Are you a member of, or have you heard of TIE? TIE?
No.
Oh, look it up. They're having a big pitch competition in November. You can go watch if you don't want to apply to pitch. They are a really great group. They've done things like invited me to Microsoft events to sit at their table. It's a very engineering oriented group, so it's great for me as a non-technical founder to go. They're also, I'm sure, in the Bay Area, Tyler, but you may have your own connections. But I found them to be really welcoming, well-connected. They've had meetings at my lawyer's offices and they've brought in people who are really skilled with the sort of things that community needs help with, like SEO for your product. I recommend you check them out. It's for you at london.tie.org.
Okay, I'll definitely try that, because what we do is one thing we are good at is pitching, frankly speaking. So, so because the reason is initially when we started off about 2 years ago, we started pitching to normal people like angel investors who've got a little bit money and stuff. Over 2 years, our pitch itself, the deck, and this is really transformed to a large extent. And also we what we did is we used another education edtech kind of an exit mentor to redo our pitch in a way. It cost us some money, but then now obviously in front of VCs, so we've now done 80 or pitches for various VCs and stuff at different level, and never have got a bad, we've not done damage to ourselves. That's what I can say. So the pitch is holding up. Because sometimes if you do a bad pitch, it goes against you, isn't it? So and these VCs talk to each other. So if you've done one bad pitch, that only means that you made a wrong a dot somewhere which can connect to other VCs and stuff. So yes, at this minute, a lot of VCs always say, okay, you don't have a technology kind of a thing. Go back, develop your product, come back to us. Definitely come back to us. This is our card. So that's how we are ending up with. So pitch is okay, I think. It's just that, that connectivity to the VCs. And also another thing is connectivity to people like you guys, where, it's all non-technical founders and a way to successfully, what's it called? Execute your idea.
Awesome. I was remembering that the first big exposure I had to VCs was after winning a pitching competition about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I would say. And that really changed. I immediately started, we didn't close any deal with any VC. But once I had a second startup idea or anything, I had the connections, right? And I could say we won that competition. It was a national thing in Brazil. So it makes a lot of sense what Catherine is bringing to us for me.
And I think plus VCs attend these events too. So it's a way to make new connections with that community pretty easily.
Yeah. Okay, so we crossed the half-hour mark, and we had the chance to explore a lot of talking about the need for proof, what we've been calling the need for proof. But quite frankly, I think that's the easiest part for non-technical people, right? It is part of the business skills to create relationships, to pitch, to do this kind of stuff. I would like to get into the nitty-gritty detail about building product as a non-technical founder. Specifically, how to iterate fast as non-technical founders, because that's really hard sometimes. It's not as common in technical groups to see people saying, okay, we've been doing this for 2 years now and we're looking for seed funding. It is quite common among non-technical founders. And I believe the main reason is because you take too long to launch a product before you can launch, right? Do you have any sad story to share before you talk about good ones?
Well, actually, I guess on that specifically, like, Daniel, I'll turn a question back to you. There was a story that you had in the chapter preview that you wrote up, the blog post that you had about somebody who was non-technical, had a developer build the MVP, basically went out and presented and pitched the MVP and came and got a bunch of feedback in terms of features. But when she went back to the developer had already moved on to other projects and couldn't help her. So she had to scramble and find another developer. And that's frankly like a situation that I think a lot about, and I get worried about, is once you actually have the MVP built, like, iterating quickly is so important. And are you disadvantaged without that technical person to be able to iterate very quickly? So I think it's something that just to be aware of and think about even before, I mean, as you're building the MVP.
And what's the question?
Sorry, and the question was like, so like, what do you kind of recommend in terms of avoiding situations like that? And what did she do? Is there anything that she could have done differently to kind of get ahead of that issue?
Yes, the first thing was to negotiate a contract, in a long-term contract with the developer she was happy with while they were doing the work. That's the first thing you should do. You probably be spending, and that's something you've done, Tyler, and I'm gonna share it. When we were negotiating to work together, Tyler asked us for a discount. And the reason he asked for a discount was, I need to have enough cash for after the launch later, right? And we were able to make it work in a way that didn't make Tyler an orphan. I used to call people that launched the project and then became orphan of developers, right?
Yeah.
And reserving that cash for later was very important in your case, right? And you were aware of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's the main thing. Sometimes you're not able to do it. You either don't have enough cash for a long-term engagement, or the person you're hiring is not available for by the hour maintenance or smaller stuff. Because usually what happens with non-technical founders is the following. You pay a lot of money, sometimes once, and then fail, and then you have to pay a lot of money again to be able to launch. And then you do launch, but you only be able to raise the seed round you're going to be looking for after, I don't know, 6 months, a year. It depends. Some people get it's not lucky. Some people are fortunate to be able to raise faster, but it usually takes some time. In the meantime, you won't be able to pay for the same commitment you had while developing your product. You're gonna have to pay less and distribute across the time, right? So instead of paying for a full engagement, you need like 6 months to a year of small commitment, but it needs to be a commitment. Otherwise, you won't be able to iterate fast enough, right?
Yeah.
So in Jessica's case, which is the founder I talked on my article, she didn't make the commitment earlier, and she ended up having to develop a huge network of developers that she could hire, one for one specific task, another for another specific task, and this kind of stuff. In the end, now she's well connected among developers, right? But it cost her a lot. She learned a lot. She's a smart founder, so she is persevering. I wouldn't say she's successful right now, but she will be, I guess, right? Because she's learning. The only thing is that it took her so much time to learn, to be able to learn, to have the information she needed to learn, that she ended up running out of cash twice in this process. And then that happens a lot, right? So I would say, I mentioned 2 things: having the, let's call it maintenance contract, the support contract, right? And building a network of developers before you start. You need a backup, right? Your developer will be hired by Airbnb at some point, right? And then you're gonna have to have a backup. I have a software development company, and we are very good at attracting great developers because we do great work, and people like keeping the best practices and technical stuff, right? And we have a hard time recruiting. Imagine a non-technical founder, right? Do you guys foresee this kind of, well, Catherine, from what I can understand, has now a technical co-founder, right, Catherine?
I do. And we're rebuilding so much faster than it went the first time because he has skills that they didn't have. They represented that they had skills that they didn't have. And one of my failures, I realize now, is although we talked about the support contract, the ongoing contract, and we talked about how many hours they could give me and how much it would cost, I never set it down as a contract. So I had written conversations about it, but I didn't have a contract. And so when they made some bad decisions, they're questionably in business right now. They still have a website up, but I think it's only family members that are working for them instead of the 20 people that they had at one point. I couldn't hold them to anything. All I had was their good word, and I trusted them. And I think having a contract is something I learned is very important. In fact, it's what I'm working on right now, even with my co-founder, because we need a contract. I can't have that happen again.
Yes, but one thing that is true is that it will happen again eventually, not necessarily with your co-founder, because if you guys hit it off really well, but with developers, right? You might have a contract. They might be able to, I don't know, give up their shares or this kind of stuff to leave your startup to work for Uber. But Uber might be willing to pay for all that and more, right? And having a contract is a good way, but having a network of developers is much safer net, right?
And yet, I also recognize that if you have to keep going back to a network, everybody has their own tools and their approach and their own idea of what architecture is best. And what I found when I was interviewing people to come on board is, and I knew this would happen, everybody had their own idea of this is the way it has to be done. And I'd think, well, that's great if you're doing it. But the guy I talked to last week was like, this is the way it needs to be done. And so I think the danger, and it is inevitable that if you have a product, you have to keep it going and you have to keep migrating your team, but everybody has their own opinion. And so you slow down your progress if you can't keep your original partner, if they could work for you.
Yes, and there's one aspect of what you talked that you need to keep as well, which is the ability to have technical discussion with technical people without knowing the technical stuff. That skill is the most invaluable one, because you're going to be able to take a look, a very serious look at the developer's eyes and say, no, this is not the way that should be done. The way that should be done is the way that it's currently done. And you won't be able to fake it for long. You're gonna have to get your hands dirty and understand the concepts behind the technical stuff. But you can start by following your gut and saying, okay, there's something wrong in what this guy is telling me, and I can't quite grasp it, but it is. I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna say, okay, there's something wrong about what you're telling me. I don't know what it is, but let's figure it out. Let's figure another way. And that's, in terms of skill, I think that's the most important skill non-technical founders need, right? Calling bullshit. That's the name of the skill. Because we developers, I'm kind of in the middle. I sometimes see myself as a developer. I sometimes see myself as a non-technical founder, mostly a non-technical guy now. But I unfortunately come up with a lot of bullshit when I'm thinking about technical stuff, and that's just life. We had a client last year that called me and said, okay, the project is not going well. If we keep on doing it like that, we're gonna miss the deadline. And I said, no, I'm seeing the metrics, everything is fine. We're doing great work. And I'm gonna share very openly, what I failed to do was to take a look at the actual product. I just looked at the project management software and I saw that we were on track on the map. I didn't look at the territory, right? And he could have believed me, and that would be terrible both for my company and for him. He used the whole funding, the whole of the funding he had to hire us, and we would have wasted it if it wasn't for him, the non-technical founder. What did he do? He said, no, that's not right. You're doing it wrong. We're gonna miss the deadline. And he called me on my bullshit, and I was able to take a closer look and see, okay, you're right. I had to fire people. I had to hire other developers. I had to make very important changes in my team to be able to fulfill the commitment I had with this client. And he was the one who warned me. Even if I had the title of a CTO, right? Fuck it. I at that moment I didn't know what I was doing. and experienced developers very often don't know what they're doing. Did you guys ever had the opportunity to sense that some bullshit with developers?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was thinking about it as you were kind of going through it, I think the experience that I had is like, as the founder, you need to have some base level understanding of every aspect of your company and your organization and every kind of functional area, and that includes the technical piece as well. I mean, sure, like you're not the one writing the code, but just to kind of understand how the data is being structured and kind of the kind of core concepts. Again, to your point, I think you need to have some level of understanding so that you can be involved in the conversation, that you can kind of know the underlying structure of how things are built, because otherwise you're at such a disadvantage, and you are left to the whim of the developer or developers that you're working with. That it's just much more likely that something bad can happen when you're don't have that just some level of understanding. So I think I'm lucky. I think my co-founder that I work with's a little bit, he's not technical by any means, but I think he kind of understands the technical side of things a little bit more. And I think it just goes a long way to have a much more proactive and just a much better conversation when we are working with the developers.
Yeah, and Bill is Tyler's co-founder. Bill is not
Bill's
afraid
my
of
co-founder.
asking questions. He asks
and which I love.
every
Yeah.
single question he wants to ask.
Yes.
It might seem dumb. They're not dumb ever, but you might think it's dumb before you ask them. But he asks everything, and that's a great approach as a non-technical founder.
Yeah.
Catherine, when you look at your current version, are you able to use it as it is, as a work in progress in your own device?
I am. So that is better than it was the first time around. And I can see faster responses. I can see that some things that didn't work at all before were working in the first 5 days. So it's going a lot faster. And what I've learned is that you really need to be able to see the milestones, as you said, in your own environment. I think in my first iteration, I knew they were struggling a little bit. I'd hired a group that was teaching people to code, and I trusted that the two top people at the top were overseeing that. And it turns out they weren't doing a very good job of overseeing it. So I would recognize that people were struggling and they were learning as they went. And I often wasn't able to see things. And that would be a huge problem because I wouldn't know that they were broken until we were way past deadlines. So in retrospect, I should have stopped everything. I just kept trusting that at some point it would all come together magically. The magical soup would be in my bowl and it would work. And I would go in and there are things that I could look at and I have enough technical expertise that, I, at least for the CSS, I can go into the HTML and say, this is where you fix it. But when it came to some of the other things, all I could do is ask questions and I would say my takeaway is hiring beginners that are supposedly being overseen was not a good way to do things. The guy I'm working with now will show me something and he'll iterate on it in 30 minutes and we'll have a different result in the same day. And that's much different.
Yes, that's the biggest difference, right? Being able to see the actual product. That changes everything.
I'd be curious to know what you think about this. So one of the people who I've attracted as an advisor is a vice president of digital product for a Fortune 500 company. So he has tremendous experience doing this. And he told me that he felt it was a mistake that I was having daily stand-ups. So we'd have daily meetings that were 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes they were longer if something was tricky. But he said, really, you should have only been doing once a week and just looking at deliverables and not having these daily meetings. Does anybody here have an opinion about that?
Well,
I mean, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Naresh.
I do daily meetings, and it is helpful because when you're taking baby steps, you also measure baby steps. So one day at a time, one thing at a time, and then it's okay. It's what suits you. But frankly, as long as you're not, you said something yesterday, next day morning you have a different thing, and then you come back with new ideas, and then you distract people. So that is what I think causes problem. I mean, one of our guy, we usually have to calm him down because every day he comes back with a new idea, and then it confuses everybody. So he said, no, stick to what we have now. You know, don't diverge, don't distract. But then stand-ups, we do stand-ups. We call it stand-ups, but we are remote, and it does help. According to us. But anyways, guys, it was really great to meet everybody. I have to leave because I have another call. Before I go, I just want to put a face to my voice. That's how I look. And hello, yes. And I hope to meet you all again. And I have already, in this meantime, Catherine, I've registered to Thai. It's fabulous, I think. And hopefully I'll keep you updated as to how it goes.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, and I will see you all in whenever Daniel arranges. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and I've sent my number to Daniel, so you could always pick it from me.
Amazing.
Cheers. I will leave now. Yeah, I will have to leave.
Thanks, Naresh.
Thanks,
Yes.
man.
Bye.
Yeah, I think we should be wrapping up. We have 2 minutes until our time. Very quickly, Catherine, I love daily meetings that are 10 to 15 minutes short. And I love weekly sprint calls where you plan for things so you don't distract the developers with changes during the week. That's the process I would recommend. So guys, before we end, I would just like to ask you and talk a bit about what we do at Seasoned, which is our company that develops, designs, and codes products for startups to specifically tailored for non-technical founders. And I would love to ask you if you know someone that is struggling to build their product or at the right time to build their product. Just introduce us, Lucas and Pedro, introduce them to the community, whatever you can do to help us, because the main challenge we have with non-technical founders is finding them. That's what we are struggling with as a business. And I hope the community will give us much more than finding, like making us tight as well. So thank you very much for today. I loved it. If you can share what you've thought about the webinar at nontechnicalfounders.com, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Okay, thanks for holding this.
Anytime.
Yeah, thanks so much, Daniel.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.